Welcome to Proof of Ergo, Episode 2. I'm James Kever, and we've got an exciting second show coming your way, especially if you're into gaming, playing or developing games on the Ergo blockchain, as we'll be talking to lead developers for Ergogames.io and DarkPool, both of whom are going to tell us about their projects to include their upcoming initial decentralized exchange offering. And between those interviews, we're going to discuss a way to get your hands on Ergo that we didn't mention last week, but deserves to be discussed nonetheless: mining, how to do it, and things to consider, as this is yet another way to get some Ergo. And the really cool thing about mining, you only need the hardware and power to run the hardware and an internet connection, and you can be well on your way to earning Ergo without having to go to an exchange or buying it from someone else. But before we get into all that, I want to let you know about all the ways you can watch and listen to this newscast. If you don't mind just listening to the show, you can find us on Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, even Apple Music. We plan to dive in deep on some of these interviews, which may mean run times that can be longer than you prefer. Now, to address this, we'll be including detailed timestamps within the description of this newscast you can use to jump to the parts you're interested in and skip the parts you're not. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening passively in the car or even on your mobile device, we are so thankful you're tuning in and hope you keep coming back for more. Ergogames.io. They'll be launching their initial decentralized exchange, or IDO, relatively soon, which they'll be doing with the help of Ergopad, and we'll be sure to link to more specific information on deadline information in the description of this video. But that makes now a great time to talk about the Ergogames.io project. The team aims to marry blockchain games as well as game development, education, and training. Lead developer for the project, Andy Redding, also known as LGMeister, calling in to discuss this innovative project. Andy, it is great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Starting right off, how do blockchain games differ than, say, phone app games like Wordle?
Yeah, so I mean, blockchain games in general are a fairly new thing that has kind of swept the scene of games as of recently. So what's the largest difference right now is the fact that there's the integration of the blockchain, being able to use tokens and being able to use coins as part of a game. And I think that's really revolutionary, because a lot of times with these games that have come out on mobile, they use a model where you're going to be paying to play a game or even paying to try to earn something. Versus with a blockchain game, a lot of the dynamics that are coming out of it is being able to have a tokenized reward in order to reward different types of play. And it's really going to depend on the game that comes out, and it depends on the developer, because in essence, you could create a game that mimics almost exactly what a Wordle-like game or any given mobile game can be. But because we have the blockchain behind us, there are just so many options that open up to be able to use blockchain as a gaming technology. So just kind of rounding back, the biggest difference is being able to utilize this new technology in a gaming system that is decades old. I think is incredibly important and something that's fun.
Well, Andy, you kind of are touching on what I want to ask you about next. Play to earn, or P to E. This is a concept that I'm reading a lot about, and I'm curious, is this part of Ergogames.io's business model?
Yeah, for sure. So I wouldn't say it's the main point of our business model, but it's something that we're going to be using in some or all of our games. And part of the reason is public sentiment right now around games for the blockchain are really looking for this play to earn model. We see large games like Axie Infinity, where you have to invest a fair amount of money to play, but at the same time, as you play, you're gaining back that that initial capital. And I think people are really excited to do that. I wouldn't say it's truly an investment, but I would say it's a fun way to gain a little bit of a reward that can be, like fungible, a token that can be utilized in other ways besides just the game. So yeah, we're definitely going to be using that within our gaming model. It's not going to be the pinnacle, because what we really want to focus on is the game itself, the dynamics, the mechanics behind a game. But at the same time, we want to make sure that players are being rewarded for the work that they do within the game, especially if it's going to be a multiplayer game where they're going to be battling other people. We want to make sure that they are rewarded for the skills and the time they put in.
Awesome. Now you've got a few different games under development at the moment. Which ones are you prioritizing first?
Yeah, so the two in development right now, the first one is called DigiGoats, and that is going to be based off of our game, or our NFT series, Screaming Ergots. And this was a game that was developed because our community was really looking for larger utility with our NFTs. So we are prioritizing that right now as far as developing it. It's in an alpha stage right now. We're about to come out with our second iteration of the alpha phase, and after that, it'll be an open beta and then a full launch later on. That being said, our main goal for ErgoGames.io after DigiGoats will be Monster Pub Brawl, and that is a much larger scaled game. That is a game that's not based off a NFT series that's currently out. And so that's currently in development, mostly on paper. We just hired a lead artist yesterday to start developing our artwork. So we'll be seeing some concept art come out in the next few weeks and months. And then after that, we'll be coming out with our light paper and our white paper for Monster Pub Brawl. So that's something that's going to be a lot larger. We have the general outline of our timeline on our website. But otherwise, it's going to be kind of a much longer and very well thought out game versus DigiGoats, which I think is a wonderful game in itself, but it's a little bit simpler and smaller and a little bit more attached to the NFT that we already came out with. So those are our two main objectives. On top of that, we have a system called Proof of Concept Plus. And what that pretty much is being able to build these kind of semi-games that may not be able to be marketable to a large audience, but kind of just a proof of concept, literally what we call it, in order to see if certain game mechanics work. Right now, we're creating kind of a chess game where you're going to be able to load in any given Ergo NFT as your playable character. And this is just kind of to see, like, okay, is the sentiment out there? Is this something that the public would want to see? Is this a dynamic that can be incorporated into blockchains? Or is this something that, is going to be fun for a week and then just be off to the winds? And the reason we're doing that is twofold. First off, for ErgoGames.io, in order to kind of gauge public sentiment with different types of games and mechanics. But the second part is to allow other developers who are not within our organization to try out these mechanics to see if, their game is publishable. And so that's a secondary part of our website and our organization that we're really looking forward to.
It would be great. I'd love to play chess with my NFTs. That would be... Now, I see on your website that anyone can submit a game idea for development. What would you say are important criteria for a successful idea?
Yeah, and so first off, we are very open for anybody to submit their project to us, and we don't have a huge criteria right now. The criteria is just making sure that the game is ethical as far as if you're going to have tokenomics within the game, they're going to be making sure that the tokenomics are legitimate. It's not a rug pull game where you're building up this capital and then just leaving the ecosystem. So later on, we're going to have a little bit more requirements to make sure that the games coming out are very have a quality that is to the tune of what the Ergo community expects. But right now, I think the largest thing people can do as they are developing and building their games is to focus on the game mechanics and the game development first before even thinking about tokenomics or even integrating blockchain. I think I've seen at least tens of projects on different blockchains, whether it's Ethereum or Binance, anything like that, where these people come out with these very quickly made games that have almost no game mechanics. And I would almost equate it to like rock, paper, scissors, where you're pressing a button, choosing rock, paper, scissors, and defeating a computer player and then gaining a token because of it. And in the short term, these projects can look really good because the tokens can rise in price very quickly. But more often than not, what we see is an immediate crash after the initial player influx dies down. So that is something that we don't want on our organizational website. We want to make sure that the games that are being put out are, number one, fun for the player to play. Number two, just the growth needs to be organic. And number three, when the tokenomics do come out for if they decide to be play to earn games, the tokenomics need to be extremely well thought out. They need to have a way for players to get in without spending a crazy amount of money. And then when they do play to earn and earn a tokenized return, those returns need to be stable and they need to be well thought out. We see a lot of games that come out and tout that you're going to be getting your return back in 2 days or 2 weeks. And there's no investment out there right now that can do that for anybody and be stable. If you see an investment like that, it's one of three things. It's either a scam, it's gonna work for about a week and then come crashing down, or I guess the third thing is it just doesn't work at all. So we want to make sure that, number one, players are getting a game that's of quality, and number two, the tokenomics behind it are solid.
Can you walk us through what a game tournament would look like and how that would be hosted?
Yeah, absolutely. So game tournaments are going to be something that develop over time. We want to make sure that whatever games that come onto our platform have the ability to be open to anybody who wants to be coming in. And I think game tournaments kind of help that as far as giving games a different light as far as availability to be played. So just kind of giving an example with multiplayer games, we want to be able to make sure that these games come out and are available to the most people, and these tournaments hopefully will be a way to do that. And one thing we really want to do is make sure that these tournaments, number one, are fun for everybody and are open for everybody, but we want to make sure that the prizes that come out have something to do with cryptocurrency. Having tokenized rewards, I think, is really important. Just to be able to incentivize people to come in and play the tournaments and to reward those who do well in the tournaments. At the same time, I think NFTs can be a huge part of these tournaments, being able to give out these non-fungible rewards to people for doing a good job. So like even a trophy or anything like that can be something built on the blockchain. So that's really exciting that we get to integrate blockchain into these formerly non-tokenized ways of having a tournament. So we're really excited to be hosting that, and we're going to be helping out with that as well, with giving especially smaller games a chance to have tournaments, and maybe giving them a little bit of tokenized rewards to help them, especially if they don't have the capital to do that.
But it doesn't just end with a gaming platform, right? I mean, you're also offering free development education, and this is kind of a creative marriage of two different genres, if you ask me. I mean, how did this come to be?
Yeah, so for me and our organization, education is incredibly important. And where that stems from is from me being an educator. I've been a public educator for about 7 years now, teaching everywhere, anyone from about kindergarten to 12th grade, so the whole gambit of ages. And I've taught different subjects, but everything that I've seen with education as far as giving people the tools to get to just understand, whether it's technology or geography or math or anything like that, when you give them those tools, people can become so creative with what they can create and build. And that's no different with the blockchain. And it doesn't matter if you are a teenager or if you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old, everybody has the capacity to learn. And we want to make sure that when we give out these education classes, we are letting people do it with zero fee. We don't want to have a paywall. We want to make sure that everybody equally has a chance to succeed. And part of the reason is, like, we understand that we're not going to be making money off the education, but at the same time, we understand that when we grow the ecosystem for gaming on Ergo, we are making our brand bigger that way. And so in an essence, we do have these qualities where we want to make sure that people are, getting quality education and things like that. But at the same time, it's going to grow our organization by creating people who can, either program, develop for us, or it's creating competition. And to me, I love competition as far as they are going to grow their own ecosystem or their own organization and create, that competition for us. But as a whole, that grows the entire ecosystem. And that's something that we want to make sure that's allowed. And we want to make sure that anybody can do that.
Now, for the educational aspect of Ergo games, what kind of curriculum can we expect? Can you talk about some of the learning objectives?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have several different levels of development, anywhere from an extremely low level. We're going to have a class called the Greenhorn level of development. And what that pretty much is going to be is you don't need to know anything about computer programming. It's going to be an absolute from the very bottom up class. And what that's going to look like is, the first day or two is going to be really chatting about like, what does a syntax and what does programming, like what does your computer think about when you type these words out? And talking about how variables and all these very simple things, how they work to create this larger full-fledged game. And with these lower level classes, what we're going to do as a class is we're going to create a game together. Everybody's going to have their own console and their own computer, but we're going to be developing the exact same game. We're going to have assets that are available for these developers, just so we have a streamlined product. And at the very end of our class week, or however long we have our class for, everybody's going to come out with a product that they can say, I programmed this game, however low level it is. If it's tic-tac-toe, or if it's just moving a character from A to B and gaining something, whatever that game's going to be, I want people to come out from our education courses saying, hey, I created this product. And that makes me a developer now, regardless of the level they're at. Now, as people progress in their development, or if people are already seasoned developers, we're going to have more and more strenuous classes where we're going to be, I want to say the classes are going to become more of a conversation versus we're going from A to B to C. I want to be able to have conversations with developers that are experts in their field, because as you get better at programming, people tend to kind of steer towards one aspect of programming, whether that be games, or even one aspect of games, whether that's mechanics or dynamics of games, or even artwork of games. So that's the more expert classes are going to be open to a little bit more interpretation as far as what it's going to be. Our curriculum will be a little bit looser, and everybody will be coming out with a product at the very end, but it's not going to be the same product. Everybody will be able to create their own product and hopefully get some collaboration between people. And those expert classes, what I want to come out of that, whereas it's a little bit different with the earlier classes, what I want the experts to come out with is a sense of camaraderie between those developing in Ergo, and being able to just create some links with other people, creating some conversations with other organizations. And again, that's to build the ecosystem, to grow the gaming ecosystem as a whole. So we're really looking forward to the education aspect of ErgoGames.io. I, again, as a educator, see the huge benefit in educating people.
Now, would you talk about NFTs? You've done several interviews, and I've heard you say several times that an NFT needs to have utility. What do you mean when you say this, and what does utility look like?
Yeah, so I think NFTs are just an amazing concept. If you go to OpenSea, one of the NFT auction houses, you just see thousands upon thousands of projects that are either they just have zero value in the fact that, okay, the pictures might be interesting, but there's nothing that comes out besides a JPEG or a PNG. And what we want to make sure to do on ErgoGames.io is to not only have NFTs as an object that looks cool, but we want to make sure that these objects do something. So one large example of that is being able to use these NFTs as in-game items. We want to make sure that players can game these NFTs through playing a game. We want to make sure that players are able to sell and trade these items openly on the market. We don't want to limit players with these NFTs.
So you're talking about having actual custody of these NFTs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just, I guess, a quick example of that would be if you look at like Diablo, a non-NFT, non-blockchain game, but they have thousands of these custom items. And what we want to do is take that concept and throw it into the blockchain. We want to get these custom items and then create them into NFTs. Your wallet will own this NFT, and you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, you can sell it, you can trade it, you can burn it. Like, we don't care, because we want to make sure that people have the ability to own everything that they do within the game. Actually, and on a flip side, I want to just say, I think NFTs can have a huge value without utility. I think there are some amazing artists that create artwork that that speaks for itself. So I don't want to say all NFTs have to have utility. I just think that many projects out there that come out with NFTs don't have any sort of reasoning behind it. And I think art can speak for itself, but when we talk about Ergogames.io and gaming in general, NFTs need to have some sort of utility behind it in order to function and be an interesting part of the ecosystem.
LGMeister, Andy Redding, lead developer of Ergogames.io. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'd love to talk to you again as the project develops.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to everything that our project and your project is coming out with. So thank you.
Again, you can find more information on Ergogames.io, their team, and their IDO timeline in the description of this newscast. Now, switching gears a little bit, in our first episode, we discussed ways to get your hands on Ergo, and I failed to mention one huge way to get some Ergo and potentially not even cost you a dime, assuming you've got a computer, power, and access to the internet. I'm talking about mining Ergo. Now, there are several reasons you might want to mine Ergo, not the least of which is supporting decentralization of the network. The more people mining Ergo, the more resilient the network is. So mining is a very good thing. It allows you to generate your own Ergo without having to buy it from exchanges, ultimately earning you passive income. Now, like Bitcoin, Ergo uses proof of work as a consensus algorithm. Ergo uses a proof of work algorithm called Autolykos 2. Autolykos 2 is an ASIC-resistant memory-hard proof of work algorithm. Now, if I lost you there, not to worry. What's important here is it uses less resources than other algorithms, and GPUs run much cooler than if you're mining, say, Ravencoin or Ethereum. This means your GPUs are going to last longer. Now, being ASIC resistant means consumer-grade hardware can mine Ergos, such as GPUs from NVIDIA and AMD. This means it's much more difficult for centralized entities to control the supply chain of mining hardware, like what happens in Bitcoin. Secondly, it means when mining hardware becomes obsolete for the purposes of mining, it isn't just discarded or thrown away. It goes into a secondary market where gamers and other people can purchase those used GPUs for their own purposes. So how do you mine Ergo? For Windows, it's pretty easy to set up mining software, such as Team Red Miner for AMD GPUs and T-Rex for NVIDIA GPUs, or NB Miner that will work on both. You may want to look for guides online on how to get the best overclock speeds out of your specific graphics cards. This method is great if you use the computer for other things, as you don't need to install a special operating system and you can mine when you're not using the computer for other things. A dedicated mining rig, however, is another way to do it. And for this configuration, we recommend using the Hive operating system because it provides remote access and control of the rig. It allows you to monitor the performance of the rig without being at the same location. You can even push new overclocks remotely from your cell phone. Okay, once you've got your machine configured, your next step has to do with choosing a mining pool. Mining pools allow miners to combine their computing power and share in the rewards. Now, quickly, we do not recommend NanoPool and suggest you avoid using them. Why? Well, currently NanoPool controls 33% of the hash rate, which is great, but a month ago they were closer to like 45%, which isn't so great. As Ergo grows, it'll be more difficult for a single pool to control so much of the network. But it's up to the miners to make sure hash power isn't centralized. And in this case, we're worried about that with NanoPool. If one pool gets more than 50% of the hash power, they could act maliciously and manipulate the transactions being submitted to the network. So we just suggest for now finding another pool. Now, pools have different methods of determining how much to pay each person. Basically, they count everyone's hash contribution in the time it takes them to mine each block. They then share the payouts accordingly. Now, sometimes it takes a long time for a pool to mine a block. This is called block effort. If block effort is above 100%, it means the pool has spent more hash rate than expected to receive that block reward. Some miners will jump between pools, trying to capture the rewards from each block without mining the whole block. This is called pool hopping, and it's a problem PPLNS payout systems attempt to solve. PPLNS stands for Pay Per Last N Share. Now, you can read about this more online, but these pools should benefit miners who mine 24 hours a day and don't turn their rigs off. PPS is a pay per share, so you're paid in more of a linear fashion. The pool operator takes on the risk because they always pay the same whether the block takes a long time or is mined quickly. This is why PPS has a higher fee. Prop is proportional shares. So if there were 100 shares needed to mine a block, each share receives 1% of the block rewards. Seems pretty simple, but this system is the most susceptible to pool hoppers, but is a better choice than PPLNS if you turn your miner on and off, like if you use the computer for other things. Now, there's a lot to consider, but the best way to learn is to just jump right in. We're going to include some tutorial resources in the description of this newscast on how to mine with a Windows machine or a dedicated rig, so be sure to check that out. Now let's talk about DarkPool, a game, you might even call it a platform, built on Ergo that will also be having its initial decentralized exchange offering very soon. It's a game that offers a 3D top-down role-playing experience, and its lead developer, Reid, an expert in deep learning and computer vision, has graciously joined us to answer a few questions about the project. Aaron, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you for having me.
So there's some similar games out there on the blockchain to DarkPool. How would you say DarkPool differentiates itself from, say, others like Alien Worlds, for example?
Well, DarkPool, we started out kind of looking similar at first, doing an isometric 2D kind of pixel art game, but we eventually moved into a direction where we're working with a 3D, what we call a kind of an isometric 3D top-down game. Its similarities are kind of, it's like similar to Zelda Breath of the Wild on Switch from a camera perspective. While you're playing, we kind of arrived at that based on some tests and mining and crafting in the game. We're just looking better in that perspective. So we kind of finished with that type of game engine, and we have a great game engine that is pretty versatile with the physics and everything else. So we liked the look of it, and we just went with it. So we started pouring everything into that aspect of the game.
Very cool. Now, how do you plan to tackle some of the common issues that plague play-to-earn games, such as bots or poor tokenomics?
Yeah, right. From the tokenomics perspective, we're constantly watching what other games are doing. So we have a list of a lot of games that are out there, and whether or not they're successful or not, we track them and see what works and what is the utility of the network and what is the utility of the system is really key. And whether it works with the player, we're very player oriented in how we develop games, and player comes first and the gameplay always comes first. And then any utility outside of that is just adds to the game. So we watch what is successful and we throw away anything that isn't successful. And so we are looking at designing our tokenomics dynamically. We're going to set in stone some aspects of it, but we're also going to be able to change that based on whether or not people like it, whether it's working for them, and whether or not it's a utility. And so that kind of drives the way we're developing that.
Yeah, so you're not really reinventing the wheel. That's pretty cool. Now, why Ergo? I mean, why there's several other blockchains you could have gone with. Why develop DarkPool on Ergo?
Well, I got involved with Ergo through an Ergo hacks last year, and working with everyone on the Ergo hack, especially which eventually turned into like Ergopad, came out of that, and some other things. Everybody was just so gracious with their time and willing to develop, from the people on our team all the way up to the core developers of Ergo itself. And I don't think you find that anywhere else. It's a wonderful ecosystem. The technology in it and the theory and everything behind it are just bomb-proof. When I'm reading through white papers, I'm just like, this is what I like about deep learning and computer vision papers. You can really find some solid theoretical foundations, and with Ergo, it's really there. So we decided to go with that system as a backbone of how we want to develop going forward. And the community itself is so wonderful with their time and just is on top of development that we just thought that this is a no-brainer. This is just the best community to be in.
Awesome. So I am assuming that there will be NFTs of some kind with DarkPool, and I'm curious, with marketplaces like Sky Harbor popping up, do you see a role for marketplaces like that in your games or future development?
Completely. It's just an aspect of the game. The token themselves, the ERC structure of the token, there's so much utility within it that most of it hasn't even been figured out yet. There are some use cases right now that's a lot of hype, but there's so much embedded in it that we could do with it that we're really excited about the things that we can unlock in the future. So it's not just about what we're doing now, it's about what the gamers themselves can think of and offer up as an idea, and we can work out whether or not we can unlock that as some kind of reward back to them, or they get some other unlock component that could be even a piece of artwork that's designed by one of the core designers or someone else, and it's a give back, like a laser cut piece of art or anything else. Anything that can be unlocked as a physical component that ties back into the game and the metaverse itself.
Very cool. Now, do you see a future where people could possibly earn a living playing games like DarkPool?
I think that's the good question. There are people that are doing that, and they kind of operate in guilds now, and they've kind of have an evolving ecosystem of how they're doing out there. So we watch that as well, as the structure of tokens and the tokenomics models work. We follow this too, and so we're really interested in seeing where that goes as an ecosystem. And I think it's completely possible within the technical capabilities of the system. So it's just finding that hybrid component of gameplay and earn and ownership. We're starting to call it a bit of ownership in the game itself. If you're dedicating time, you have a flow, and it doesn't feel like work. It's not a grind. It's just playing the game, and possibility of ownership and earning could be there. But so I think it's possible.
Now, speaking of tokenomics, let's talk about your IDO. Can you explain the tokenomics for DarkPool?
Right now, yes, we'll have a dark token that it's fixed supply, and it's a governance model, so it's structured in a DAO. So you can stake or buy it from Ergodex, and the holders can take part in in-game governance and gain rewards and things like that. We have a link up on Ergopad right now under Ergopad.io projects DarkPool, and there's a structure up there for the staking and the tokenomics as we're heading toward May 15th, I think, right now.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll make sure to have all those links in the description of this video. So what's the future for DarkPool 5-10 years down the road?
Well, It's evolved from a game that started out as, well, we want to build a game that's fun first of all, but now we're looking at expanding into more of a model of a metaverse. And so we're thinking that eventually you could theoretically have some kind of ownership in the game itself. It's a virtual world. It doesn't need to be just a game. It can actually be a virtual world that you spend some time in. And we're thinking of doing some advanced features like parallel universes within it and unlocks into separate I guess it would be called sub-universes and things like that. But it's a pretty open field for that, but we're definitely leaning toward the metaverse capabilities of it. And there's some technologies that coincide with that are happening right now, coming out, that I think lend toward that quite a bit.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Elon Musk's NeuroLink. Do you have any thoughts on that product in the context of what you're developing right now?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it just because I come from a deep learning neural network background, as well as game development, 3D simulation and things like that. So I've worked a lot in robotics and simulation, as well as 3D game engines and animation. Across the board, I've kind of worked in a lot of these fields. And when I got into deep learning, I really saw not just the capabilities of the human visual system, but the capabilities of overriding the visual system as well. And so being a component that is between the physical eye-brain connection and being more of like a ventrally connected system, like a NeuroLink, would lend itself to being a world where you could theoretically overlay the real world with the virtual world in a way that you don't have a clunky headset or an AR contact lens or anything else. You would just be plugged in. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, with the structure of the brain, how it relates to the same processing systems that we use in GPUs and TPUs, and being able to connect the two is just going to happen.
Yeah, it is a very exciting future ahead. Lead developer of DarkPool, the 3D top-down role-playing game built on the Ergo platform, Reid, thank you so much for calling in and talking with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to know more on DarkPool, like their website and IDO schedule, check out the links in the description, as we'll include more on DarkPool there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for you today. A very warm thank you to sponsors of the show, Ergopad. Without their team, this show simply wouldn't be possible. Head over to their webpage, ergopad.io, for more information on this launch pad and the projects they're working with to launch on the Ergo blockchain. You can also find information on how to stake your Ergopad bag to earn even more Ergopad. And oh, by the way, meeting one of their staking tiers gives you early access to launching projects, many of which we're talking about on this show. Go to ergopad.io for more. I'm James Kever. Thanks again for tuning into Proof of Ergo. We'll see you next show.